All right. So welcome everyone. Again, my name is Jeannie Alter. I am the Executive Director of the American School Health Association, and I welcome you today to our webinar titled One Stop Shopping, Your Ticket to Teaching Health and Mental Health While Meeting the Model. Our presenter today is Paula Prentice, and she's the co-founder of yourselfseries.com, and we'll tell you a little bit more about her. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the American School Health Association. If I could advance the slides, that would be super. There we go. What you should see on your screen here is the mission of the American School Health Association, which is to transform all schools into the places where every student learns and thrives. And we envision healthy students who learn and achieve in a safe and healthy environment nurtured by caring adults, functioning within a coordinated school and community support systems. And we are big advocates of the WISC model, which Paula will touch on in this webinar as well. I want you all to get out your calendars and save the date, because we're having our 92nd annual conference in Indianapolis this October, the 4th through the 6th. And it should be a wonderful opportunity to connect with school health advocates and practitioners, and we hope that we will see you in Indianapolis. I want to tell you a little bit about ASHA and the membership, and what are some benefits of being a member of the American School Health Association. First, we have our peer-reviewed professional journal, the Journal of School Health, which each member gets a print or an online version. Again, we have our annual conference, which includes oral presentations, poster sessions, roundtables, exhibits, and lots of time for networking. So it's a wonderful opportunity to engage with the school health community. Also, we have School Health Action, which is our bi-weekly newsletter, chock full of wonderful resources and information. Members also can receive free continuing education credits for the conference, as well as other professional development opportunities like the webinar today, which we'll talk a little bit more about. We also have a career center, and members can post jobs and job descriptions at a discount. And we also have networking communities that facilitate discussions and online support, so you kind of get some involvement with others that have similar interests and roles within schools or the community. So I want to take a moment just so you can take a look at Paula's beautiful face, but today our presenter is Paula Prentice. I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself as she gets started. But I always like to have a face to go with the voice. And so here you are. So Paula, I will turn it over to you to get started.
Terrific. Good afternoon, everyone, or maybe morning for some of you. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Jeannie, for the introduction and all that information. And Kathleen for your work behind the scenes. So I will start with a quick intro to who I am. I have been a clinical social worker for over 20 years now, focusing on teen identity development, which, as you can imagine, encompasses a lot of topics, not the least of which is their health and their mental health. So about 10 years ago, I partnered with Chris Parrott, who's a psychologist, to create our company called Yourself Series. So we provide social emotional learning curriculum, actually in a 3-book program. But that is not the focus today, as you know. However, if that is of interest to you, please, or if you want to learn more about social emotional learning, we have all that information on our website. But today I want to share with you the complement to that program, which is the free interactive website and how you can use it to teach the National Health Education Standards. So my vision today is that all of you will come away with a new resource that meets those standards. Plus, I live in New York State, so any of you who are in New York State, you might be aware, I'm sure you are aware of the mental health mandates in effect this fall. So we're going to be talking about all of this and how it all meets the whole school, whole community, whole child model.
Hi.
So that resource I'm talking about, of course, is our website. It's both free and ad-free. So Chris and I felt that today, more than ever, too many students face mental health and overall health and wellness issues that basically are crippling their potentials. So we created this site where teachers and teens could go to find quality information delivered in an interactive format. After all, as we all know, health is the most important topic to every single student that will impact them for the rest of their lives. Plus, health educators receive very little funding for materials. So Chris and I figured if we wanted to actually change the face of health for our future generations, the first step would be to empower educators with the means to do so. So today we're going to peruse the Yourself Series website so you feel confident when you use this site to teach skills, not just content. So very quickly, a little business background because I get this question a lot. People are curious about this. We created this site out of a need. It's funded through donations because we're trying to keep it ad-free. We are not a 501c3. We don't have time actually to manage all that business stuff with everything else that we're doing, but we do not run a profit. Actually, we don't even get paid. We keep the website running through the sale of lesson plans. So there are lesson plans that correspond with all the topics you need to teach in health. And next week, actually, we're going to put on our website something called the YSS Approach to Meeting National Health Education Standards. That'll be a lesson plan next week, which is basically a repeat of everything I'm doing today. But some people like to see that in tangible format. Now, I encourage you to buy lesson plans if that is what works for you, but you're under no obligation, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the free online resource and how you can use it. So let's get right into it. So this is a review of the whole child model, because this is a really important approach to learning about health, of course. The focus of the whole child is for the school to pull resources and influences from the whole community in order to address the needs of the whole child. So in this webinar, for example, you're the school, I am considered the community, the resource, and we're all in this to take care of the students. So this slide contains some of the language from the CDC website. I'm sure you're familiar with all this, but I just want to point out the focus on the physical, emotional, cognitive, and social development of the child's health and wellness. So the model asks to engage students in their learning by creating a safe environment where students are supported and challenged. And there are substantial benefits when we teach health in this way, not the least of which is that their academics go up. So you'll see how the YSS website aligns with this mission. Okay, thanks, Jeannie. Because we too support these aspects of the self. That's our model as well. Actually, our entire program is about self-development. And the methods used to teach to the self embody basically that whole child model of creating a safe space where children are engaged and supported. They might call it the whole child, and we always we call it the self. We break it down the same. So when you teach to the self, the non-academic skills like collaboration and empathy and respect and resilience and problem solving, these all increase. And these are actually the skills that parents and students and schools and colleges and even future employers really demand today, which is why it's so important to teach them, to embody them ourselves, to foster them in our students, and to help them basically develop their overall sense of self. So YSS uses specific key to unlock these potentials, and that key is awareness. This is where we really bring all of those aspects of the self to the forefront through awareness. This is why making a program interactive is actually so important. By engaging in the material, their awareness is fostered. We work on developing their self-awareness and other awareness. So as you think about meeting the many standards and mandates, consider a few prerequisites to learning listed here. Children need to feel safe before they can learn. Children need social and emotional skills in order to connect, collaborate, and feel capable of learning. And of course, children need to be an active part of their learning and health. When these three are met, learning potentials go up. That Makes sense, right? And this process aligns with brain development, so it makes even more sense. And I'm going to be talking a lot about brain development as well. So next is a quick review of the National Health Education Standards. And this is not a pretty slide, I apologize. But without reading all of this, I just want to summarize because I have a point here. Students need to know specific health content, which we're going to get to in just a second, but they need to analyze and access the information. They need to show good interpersonal skills. They need to make decisions, set goals, and practice what they learn. And honestly, that's a lot to ask of them, and their brains aren't wired like this. And what I mean by that is that the brain needs certain things in place before it can access the higher processing areas needed for analyzing, making decisions, setting goals, and putting all of this content into practice. So what you as an educator put into place, meaning how you set things up in your room so they feel safe, and the skills you choose to build, like the social emotional skills, those things will all help them reach these cognitive areas of the brain. So this step-by-step approach aligns with brain development, and it's how YSS teaches material. So understanding the benefits and effectiveness of this approach is part of the focus today. So now we're going to dive into the website material. So here's the landing page at yourselfseries.com. So I'm going to walk.
Hi, Paula. This is Kathleen. If you are still speaking, we cannot hear you. Your sound cut out completely. So if I am assuming others can hopefully hear me. If you can, please go ahead and type in that chat box. And Paula, you look like you're still connected. So I am not sure what happened. So Jeannie?
Yeah, I am still here.
That to happen again?
No, I don't know what happened.
Okay. Well, so we'll keep going. So
Yep.
I'm going to start over with this slide. This is the landing page at yourselfseries.com. And so basically, as I was saying, I'm going to walk you through with a series of screenshots, and then you can spend as much time as you want perusing the site on your own, and of course, telling everyone how awesome it is. So you can see here loads of information about the program, about professional development, how to buy the books, the lesson plans, etc. But then you would click on the teens box or just simply scroll down and you would see this. So there's tons of content here, and it's broken down into these topics: drugs and alcohol, my body, my inner world, my mental health, my social life, my work and school. But content, as you know, is only half of the equation for you when it comes to those standards. So we're going to get to skills in just a moment. But for now, let's look at each of these sections where you'll see many of the National Health Education Standards content areas you need to teach and what those look like on the website. So we're going to start with my body. So here are most of the topics under my body. And as you can see, at some point or another in middle and high school, most of these topics need to be covered. And we're going to dive into a topic in a moment, but I just want to show you the other 5 content areas. Okay, so drugs and alcohol. This is where you meet their curiosities about drugs and alcohol, and this is a very popular stop for many students. And the next one is my inner world. We have a mix of topics here. Some of them you're going to want them to read, others they choose to read. So in fact, teens ask us to cover certain topics, and we spend a month each summer doing so. So if there's a topic you actually think needs to be on the site, just email me and let me know. That's what we do. In fact, we just launched this new version of the site this month. So a couple of topics actually have not been uploaded yet, such as one you see here called Your Past. That's coming soon. So the next one is my mental health. This is my favorite because We have put so much thought and research into these topics, given all that's going on lately in our nation, around the world. And in a moment, you're going to see how you can meet the New York State mental health mandates, which likely might become mandates where you all live. And they really, these things are so important to teach. So this is why we put them up there. We're actually creating a mental health lesson plan, which should be up in a few weeks. And please contact me if you have comments about that. We'd love to hear everyone's input. So the next one is My Social Life, which is probably one of the students' favorite places to visit. It's filled with content that interests them and is relevant to them. But note, this is the second post that isn't up there yet. It's called Social Media. It's under construction right now. It's going to be up soon, so please keep checking back. And one of the reasons why it's under construction is Chris, my colleague, she and I, well, we both do a lot of professional development all over the country, and currently her top talk is on social media. She's just been flooded with requests. This is a major issue, so she's updating with that post with all the latest information. So we want to get that back up there once it's updated. And then finally, we have My Work in School, which we joke, does anybody visit this side? But we keep adding to it. And as you can see from all these topics that we just went through, many of them, all, you can see how you can meet the content required by National Health Education Standards. And in New York State, as I said, mental health mandates take effect this fall, and I've been doing a lot of PD on that myself. So very briefly, I don't want to overwhelm you, but the next two slides, I'm going to show you the content required. So thank you, Jeannie. So here's one slide of all of the content areas. I know it's a lot, but these not only explain what each topic is, but they go into, what are the signs and symptoms of this? How do you relate this to who you are? It helps students manage emotions and really develops, again, that self-awareness. So you'll see, for example, we have Trauma 101 and 201, and that's because trauma is such a huge issue, kind of like anxiety, by the way, which also has two main posts to it. But in trauma, for example, the 101 introduces the main issues and definitions and so forth and so on. But 201 takes it a bit deeper with more help and more examples and more ways to relate the content to the self. And then the second slide, again, this is more content that really embodies those standards that you need to. One of the demands, the mandates, is that students should be able to describe characteristics of an emotionally and mentally healthy person. So you're going to find that throughout all of these posts, because as students interact and discuss what they've learned online, they learn even more because they apply the information to who they are. And they use self-reflection to build self-awareness. And during the teen years, if the information is about who they are, they're even more motivated because it's really all about them. So this is how you're meeting standards 2 through 8 in both the health education standards and the mental health mandates, which, by the way, those mandates really follow along in those standards. It's just, different content. So you're teaching students how to apply this information to who they are. And you have to apply information to who you are before you can, as they say, quote unquote, demonstrate an ability to do the many things that standards 3 to 8 ask. Okay, so let's jump into one. We call the topics posts, and this post is found under My Mental Health. It's a common topic taught in health class, especially for middle and high school students, and it's usually followed by the post on stress. So when you click on this post, you will then go to this screen. So here we are. On the left side, you see the table of contents, or some people call it the navigation bar. We're in the overview, hence that's why it's a little bit highlighted. And below that, you see that there are 9 more sub-posts. So the content of the post is in the center, and each of these sub-posts is short. We like to be quick and to the point and then move on. The lack of a complete development of the prefrontal cortex in these kids, the front of the brain, it means that their attention spans are limited, and they actually like action. They like to keep clicking, literally. So here you see 2 of the 4 characters introducing the topic, and we'd actually have to scroll down when you're on the website to keep reading this, but as you know, this is a screenshot. So on the right side, you see activities, And the point of these activities is that the characters, the point of the activities and of the characters, is that they fall in line with that whole child concept, the whole self. And let me explain that. First up, I'm going to talk about the characters quickly. So Jeannie, that's it. Thank you. So the characters you just saw, there are 4 of them. They're a way to bring the material to life for the reader. So this is Harrison, Nikki, Taylor, and Steve. And we get a lot of feedback on these guys. But honestly, they're more front and center in the books, the social emotional learning curriculum that we have, than they are online. But I wanted to explain to you why we use them. So we use characters because it's easier sometimes to learn vicariously through someone else. So when kids talk about topics in the books that the characters are going through, it takes the ego off the hot seat. For example, someone might use Harrison as an example about a touchy subject rather than using their own self. And as students develop more and more comfort with each other and with the content and the language, they begin to transition to using themselves as examples, which is pretty cool. So let's look at some of the interactive elements on the site. So these are the polls. This is a popular poll from the stress reduction post in the overview. And basically what the students do is they choose an answer, they click on it, and they vote. And then you see how other people voted in the box below. That's what pops up. So seeing where your thoughts rank compared to your peers is fun for these guys. And the social stuff is on fire during the teen years. I'm sure you've noticed that. And this is very much brain-based. They actually want to know if their thoughts are popular or not, or where they kind of align with their peers. So if you use the site, please encourage your students to play with all of these interactive elements. It helps them build the self. So let's look at the what would you do's. Okay, thanks. At the bottom of a subpost, you'll see this called what would you do? It's an option. You click on it, it actually will bring you to a new page with a list of scenarios and multiple choices beneath. So here we have the scenario. You have a test coming up and you feel yourself getting all stressed. You would most likely, and then there are 8 options. So let's see what happens when we choose, when somebody chooses an option. Do we just read them hanging? No. So what happens is this, an orange box pops up, and we play with them, we provide feedback, we encourage, we might dissuade them, but we try not to judge, because sometimes we'll even throw a question back at them. Again, the point is to get them to think about who they are in relation to the material and to think ahead about who they might be in a future particular situation. So you can imagine some of the situations we ask them to think about ahead of time, given some of the other topics here, like drugs and alcohol and dating abuse. It makes for some pretty dramatic scenarios. And that's actually something that their minds are drawn to, which is, again, brain-based. They like drama. And so they like to actually imagine what they would do, which is great. You want to exercise that part of the brain. So again, we ask them to think about their decisions ahead of time, before they get to the party on Friday night. And this is how they're tapping into their self-development and the prefrontal cortex, right? That's an area that needs exercise to grow. And again, they're not merely reading content. They're developing identities in this safe, structured, and guided way. By the way, this exercise speaks to standards 5 and 6 about decision-making and setting goals. That's all part of the prefrontal cortex. So the next one is the talk button under activities. Again, it shoots you down to where the post question should be answered. So this is at the bottom of each sub-post. So here's the post question after the overview, and it says, how do you know when you're stressed? And so they respond, and here I just provided one example from a student. So we monitor the responses on the back end before we publish anything, because we don't allow any trash talking. We want it all to be, positive and beneficial for you students. And as you can see, this is another way that YSS asks students to interact with the material. It builds a self. And you can imagine with all the topics on the site, we build a lot of aspects of the self. We're digging into their social, emotional, physical, and cognitive self. So again, regurgitating information to them, it's really boring and it's unproductive and it's inefficient. So applying information to the self, again, thinking whole child, increases their curiosity, their motivation, and it builds it builds their identity, and it actually really helps them to retain information. So you're going to find actually a different post question at the end of each sub post, by the way. So to wrap up, this is that's how your students are going to use the website. So remember, it provides content and skills and interactive elements to build on the self. And this is how you meet all those standards. Content is the stuff that you know. That's the stuff that's stored in the back of the brain, literally. We bring that information up front to the prefrontal cortex when we need to use it. Therefore, those skills we need are in the front of the brain. For example, so we use empathy to relate to others. That's our social networks at work. These are skills that rely on using frontal areas of the brain. Decision making, although that really does happen throughout the brain, but a lot of it coordinates with the prefrontal cortex. The way we teach now does not consider brain formation. We're not using it to the extent that we could. So when we're asked to teach all this content and create these skills for our students, we really, it benefits us so much to think about this as far as brain development. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to digress for one slide because this is such an important point. I actually want you to see what I'm talking about. So the back of the brain is stored information, as I was saying. That's the what. That's the content, okay? And the front of the brain is manipulating that information. It's the how or the skills. So if you look at the image on the left, the two regions usually operate in tandem. And then you look at the middle, and that's in people with ADHD, that synchrony it's gone. Now look at the image on the right. So that's in adults who no longer have ADHD symptoms, the synchrony is back. I use ADHD because you know, look at the stat, 11% of children aged 4 to 17 have it. And to be honest with you, this is an old statistic. So, but I think these images really drive home the point. Self-regulation happens in the front of the brain. So if you're looking for good behavior, you want them to be able to self-regulate. So that's, you know, the ability to control and manage thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. That's all been linked to academic achievement in so many studies, and not to mention life success. And what's so sad to me that ADHD is a self-regulation disorder with impairments basically across the board. When the PFC isn't functioning, the prefrontal cortex isn't functioning, they can't do stuff. It's not that they won't, they're not being willful. If I had more time, honestly, I would go into so much more detail here. But the point is to build the prefrontal cortex, to get information up there. But we need to do it in order of brain development and self-development. So I'm going to go into that a little bit. You can see that going directly to the prefrontal cortex is challenging at best for your students, not to mention nearly impossible for those suffering from ADHD, because the prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed yet in the teen years. That's why before you begin using the website, you need to set things up for success, because the standards ask you to have your students, literally, these are words taken right from the standards, predict, analyze, explain, propose, compare, plan ahead, take action, help others, make decisions. These are activities that rely on the front of the brain, the cognitive self, if you will, where we use our skills to put the content into action. And those are all great goals, but you need a plan to get there. So the traditional system in education bypasses this path, this plan. It's not paying attention. And I want us to pay attention to this. We need to focus on and use that pathway. These students, they can't just shoot the information up there. It's a process. And the first step to that is to make sure your students feel safe. So I'm going to focus on this. These are 6 ways to build the pathway to the prefrontal cortex and to build the self. So number 1, connect with your students. I know you hear a lot about this, and I talk about this a lot, and people say, well, how do I do that? So it's easy. You smile, you call them by name, you look them in the eye, you ask them how they are, you find value in each and every one of them, and you never, ever, ever shame. There are a lot of articles recently about how to connect with your students. And one I read just said to mark down general notes on your roster each day as you sort of like assess and check in with your students, and just kind of keep track of that and check in with them and make notes. And clearly, you know, watch out for the red flags. It's a big one. So number 2, introduce an icebreaker. This is actually part of the YSS approach to teaching the standards. Many icebreakers exist, but one that we use is a go-around where people actually, they say their name and then one thing that about themselves that is kind of neat or special that maybe nobody else knows yet. And then each subsequent person has to repeat all the names of every person and what their special thing is. And it's a lot of fun. And you see them that they help each other as they go along. They form connections. It creates a less intense atmosphere and does exactly what it's meant to do. It breaks the ice. So number 3, allow them to create the rules and consequences. They'll have more skin in the game when they have choices and they feel more in control of a situation. You can suggest things to them like, I don't think people should interrupt each other, but basically you let them make the final decisions. And then you post this, you make a poster board of the rules and consequences and you put it somewhere where everyone can see. And so you have something to point to. They made it. They've got skin in the game. So number 4, arrange the chairs in a circle. And this is key. They need to look at each other, call each other by name. We don't do enough of these basic skills in school. So have this be their job before class. Put the chairs in a circle before you do your health curriculum. So number 5 is assess the level of chaos, clutter, and noise in your room. So these are some of the things that actually make people feel safe. So literally look around the room and see the room through their eyes. How will they feel in the room? If you don't think they're going to feel safe, then, obviously do something about it. And number 6 is actually to ask them what makes them feel safe. Have them answer this question anonymously and then collect the answers and then do what they're asking. If they don't feel safe in a room, they actually won't engage and they will actually try to ruin the learning for others. This is a whole brain-based phenomena and unfortunately a discussion for another time because I could spend an hour on why that is alone. So it's critical to their success. So these are just six steps or ideas, if you will, to create a not a perfect, but a more optimal learning environment. So by the way, I have this, here's some of the answers that kids gave when they asked what might happen if they felt really safe in a room. So now that you've created a safe space, you want to start thinking about how to teach using the YSS website. So let's say you have to teach these 6 topics in 8 weeks, and your class only meets twice a week for 42 minutes. So that's 16 classes, which means 2 classes per topic, plus the class you need to set things up, and then at the end to wrap things up. You've already got 14 classes taken up. So you might want to keep 2 classes for emergency issues, or ask students to choose a topic that they want to learn about, which actually they'll love to have that choice because that builds their sense of self and it builds more of a connection to you because you've given them, some of the control. But I bet for many of you, your content actually looks like this. You have so much more to teach in a limited time. And that's why planning ahead is so key. So you might have to teach twice as many topics, but only allow 1 class for each topic. And you can do it. You can do this. I'm going to show you how to do this. So the second part is that you introduce the website and curriculum to your students. Okay, so in the first class, you introduce your students to all the features of the website that you just learned about. You just walk them through what I just took you through. Make the room feel safe for learning and growth, create the rules, do the icebreaker, everything we just talked about. Have students sign up for leading discussions on the assigned topics. So we're going to talk about this chart and assign the first reading. So you can plan out your schedule in advance like this, and then you have students sign up to lead the discussions about the posts that you've chosen that they have to read to meet whatever standards content that you need to teach in whatever year you're teaching. So this is the most important part of teaching using YSS. The students lead the discussions. And I'm going to explain how to do that shortly. So here's a chart when filled out as, if you have to teach a topic each class period. Things can get tight and there isn't a lot of time for you. So you could split that actual class period such that the students would teach for the first 30 minutes, let's say, and then you wrap things up in the last 10 minutes. And remember that what sets YSS apart is that the students teach the material to each other. You simply instruct the students leading the discussion to pull questions and scenarios right from the activity prompts found within all the subposts that we just went over those. So they start the class using these prompts. It's right there on the website. They just pull from it. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself because that is part of the second class here, where you arrange the chairs in the circle, right? So you work on the social skills, remind them of the class rules that are now posted in the room so you have something to point to, and then you look toward the presenters, whoever signed up to lead that discussion that day. So the student-led discussions is where the real stuff takes place. This is standard 4, by the way. It's developing and using those interpersonal communication skills. So you're tapping in to the social emotional self. They really come on board here, priming those pathways to the cognitive self. So now you need to kind of let go of the reins and let the magic happen, because it does. I've seen it. It's beautiful. The students who sign up for the post are in charge on this day. They're simply to choose some of the post questions or something from the activities, for example, from your assigned post, and bring those questions or scenarios into the classroom for discussion. So one thing we have seen work for leaders of a group discussion is that when the room becomes quiet, or at the end, if it's been a really heated discussion, you can resort to something called a go-around, where the leaders have prepared simple, harmless questions about the topic, and then they just go around the room and they let everyone respond, in a short amount of time. That way everyone gets a chance to say something. So there's a reason why we focus on social and emotional skills here. This is a brain-based phenomenon again. When you ask them to focus on these particular areas, self-awareness and other awareness, and when they do so during these student-led discussions, then the cognitive areas of the brain are more accessible, and you have paved the way. So the health education standards, the New York State mental health mandates, they ask students, again, literally, predict, analyze, explain, propose, compare, describe, identify. These requests are, again, a function of the cognitive areas of the brain, but we need to get there. We can't just jump in. And that's why, we went over creating a safe space, building emotional and social skills, teaching them about their emotions, which is something YSS is constantly asking them to self-reflect. How do you feel about this? How would you feel in this particular situation? And also you need to help them develop those social skills, because developing social skills is all about identity development, quite frankly. So that's why YSS is run in a circle. But let's not forget the physical self, okay? The physical self is key to learning because it's a skeleton for the cognitive, social, and emotional self, both literally and figuratively. So you need to teach about exercise, sleep, and nutrition, and you will probably, you've got loads of content to do that, plus it's all, this is all available on our website. But you can also incorporate physical activity as you teach. So there's so much research on this, and you can teach material in a way that moves their body for better academic results. But the bottom line here is that the more you bring movement into teaching, the better their academics. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in the brain. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain, which basically means that oxygen is being pumped into the brain, which means the brain is primed for learning, right? Exercise improves mood and even some mental illnesses. This is the latest research. When exercise is used to treat depression, success rates increase by as much as 67 to 74%. Okay, there is so much information in this area. Exercise is fast becoming a standard in mental health care. So the current research overwhelmingly shows that a steady exercise routine can help keep psychological disorders in check, which is why we cut recess, PE, and after-school athletics is a total mystery to me. But I guess I want to wrap things up here. So there's something that Chris and I decided to do on the website. It was based on a lot of feedback from educators, and it has to do with parents that you work with because they have a lot of questions. And so here I am saying, you guys bring in this new curriculum, this new way of teaching, and parents are really involved in their children's academics, and they're going to have a lot of questions. And, notoriously, you don't really have a lot of time to answer them. So we created this part of the website to kind of give you a break we thought it would be nice if you had a place where parents could go to learn about the program so that you can focus on teaching it. So share that. So I guess the final thoughts, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all that you've learned today and everything I've said, firstly, I'm sorry, but I don't want you to worry, because all this information, it's on the website. The lesson plan that basically says everything I've just said is coming soon. And our mental health mandates, that lesson plan is coming soon. So please contact me. My contact information will be up in a second if you are interested in any of that or have suggestions or anything. The point today is that you see what I mean about one-stop shopping. You are able to meet the health education standards, mental health mandates, even social emotional learning curriculum, if that is of interest to you, all of this while tapping into the whole child model. So the YSS approach has you create a safe space. It aligns with brain development, tapping into emotional, social, and therefore the cognitive aspects of the self. So the structure of the program and the activities online that we just went through, it fosters an inquisitive mindset. So students apply their learning and the topics to themselves. You increase their self-awareness. This way, you open their minds to content as you build these incredible lifelong skills for them. And when you do, you're building a solid sense of self in your students, right? You're meeting the whole child model. You're not just teaching content, you're creating these skills. So make sure you make those authentic connections. That's part of the safe atmosphere. Be sure they're learning about health, that food, exercise, and sleep are the foundation to their success. I know that's all part of your health curriculum. You know that the whole self, the solid sense of self, it grows from these conditions. And YSS is your one-stop shop for them. So I'm going to close by thanking all of you for being here today. Basically, your willingness to rise to the challenge of implementing a new resource and a new way of teaching speaks volumes, honestly, to who you are as educators. I know it's not easy, and I'm grateful for being given the opportunity to share this information with you, and I welcome you to the YSS family. So I guess we go for questions now, right?
Yes, thank you, Paula, so much. That is terrific. What a great overview of the resources that you have available. And I think it's terrific that they are available at no charge, and they're just there to help fill in those gaps where teachers might need a little support. I also wanted to comment quickly on your creating authentic connections with students. I really liked how you mentioned that to kind of make little notes about your students and what's going on with them, so you can ask them about that. I think that's kind of an old hairdresser trick too, where they kind of make notes, and the next time you come in, they ask you, so how's your mom doing? So that's terrific. And they do that because it creates connections.
Absolutely.
So I want to allow some folks to ask some questions, make some comments. And Kathleen, I'm going to turn that over to you so you can take a look at the chat box.
All right. So right now we don't have any questions in the chat box, but if you have any for Paula, please go ahead and type those in. And then as they come through, we'll bring them up to discuss. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do some of that typing.
While you think about that, let me just remind you all that this webinar will be posted on the American School Health Association website at ashaweb.org. And we'll also have the slides and the recording as well. And I'll follow up before we go about continuing education as well. So please type your questions into the chat box.
All right, we have our first question in asking what age groups have used your materials the most so far?
Okay, great question. Thank you. So again, when you say materials, I'm just going to be really broad-based here. We have the social emotional learning program. I talked about the 3-book curriculum, which we consider really the foundation for developing the self. So that's all that information is online, and that's usually taught in middle school and early high school. This information online here that's free, I that you just saw, all of that content, it varies. Middle school is the target. High schoolers get a lot out of it as well. If you were thinking about 4th or 5th grade, I would certainly have you read the content before you open it up to your students. We've traveled all over the country, and what a 6th grade looks like in one part of the country is going to look very different in another part. For whatever reason, we work in so many different communities. So the first thing we say to educators is really, you know your students best. So read the content. And but for the most part, to answer your question, middle school, that's that time of massive brain development and massive opportunity for us to connect with them and help shape them into the person that, you know, they choose to be the best version of themselves.
All right, thank you. We haven't received any additional questions yet. Does anyone else have any that they'd like to go ahead and type in the chat box? And we can get a couple of those going, and as they get answered, I'll read out another one. But as of right now, we've just had the one.
Well, maybe that's a good sign. Maybe all the I answered questions.
All right, we've got another one. Do you do anything with yoga and mindfulness, and how to integrate them into schools?
Okay, so I love this question. So I've actually personally done a lot of mindfulness training. I am not personally certified, but I guess with everything else that I do, as people ask me to do it and they know me personally, I really advocate for these things. So I have worked with middle schoolers to teach them mindfulness. I've run surveys where I did a pre-survey on emotion regulation, taught them how to do mindfulness techniques and also how to use mantras as a mindfulness technique. And then I conducted those post-emotion regulation surveys 2 weeks later to see, you know, how are they doing with incorporating mindfulness into their routine. And it was very clear. And we did a composite. This is not exactly a study that you could publish, but we just wanted to get a general sense from these kids. And it was very clear. The more that they used their mantras and worked on their mindfulness, the better their emotion regulation, period. Just, it was very clear in the study. So I've also taught health educators. I was brought in to do a mindfulness training to health and PE staff. And it was funny because the director of athletics I was working with, she said, Paula, I don't think you realize, but, you know, do you know that PE teachers have the most ADHD than any other profession? I think she was kidding, but I myself am very ADD, so I could really relate, and I think mindfulness helps. So we do, there's a mindfulness post up there for kids, and I think the more we can educate people, I think it is definitely a place we should all be going. Now, yoga I understand to be more in the elementary years. I find with the schools that we work with, they put mindfulness and yoga in there. I haven't seen a lot of yoga in middle school, but I think, gosh, it would be tremendous. And, you know, you're making me think that we should probably do something with yoga, but I don't know how to do that online. Open to ideas.
All right, thanks. And we got another question that came in asking if the content could be used in micro-learning settings. And I am hoping you know what micro-learning settings are, because I don't, and I didn't ask for clarification. So
okay, so I sure don't. I've never heard of the term micro-learning, but it sounds really cool. So I love being educated. But I think a blanket response is that these materials can be used in whatever setting you need. At the end of the day, we want to help kids be the best that they can be, right? We want them to be healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy. If you can pull from this website and achieve that, by all means, that is why it is there. So if micro learning is something that can, you know, benefit, you know, using these materials, have at it.
All right, and I had someone who clarified for me, and it was exactly what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure, that micro-learning is essentially chunking content into small elements for short learning periods. But those short learning periods are, like 3 to 5 minutes. So very micro.
Oh, wow. 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah, I don't know how to do that because you'd have to read a post. I think it takes about 3 to 5 minutes just to read one post, but then you wouldn't have time to talk about it. So I would play with it and contact me. There's a reason why my email address is in front of your face. Please, reach out. And this is all about collaboration for these kids. You tell me what they need and then I provide it, and then everyone benefits.
All right, and then another question of if the method has been used in homeschooling or online learning.
Okay, so I'll address the homeschooling. So one of the things this is why I gave a little bit of our business background in the beginning. So Chris and I, we're doing the best that we can to get this information out there, and we're so appreciative that ASHA has allowed us this opportunity. But if there were a way to for the homeschooling community to learn about this, fabulous, because one of my concerns with homeschooling, and again, from the perspective of not knowing a lot about it, I personally did not homeschool my children. But one of the things about homeschooling I have a question about is how much social skills are they getting? How much interaction, because during the teen years, identity development is very brain-based. It's in the frontal midline of the brain, and it's your interaction with other people. They actually are thinking, who am I? I'm going to evaluate my sense of self based on what I think you think of me right now. That's like how they develop their own self-concept. And it's really dangerous because they're at the height of insecurity and raging hormones and all this stuff. So the more that we can put them in these interacting with each other and in a way that's safe, right? And teaching them certain skills ahead of time and laying down those rules and consequences and stuff is because we want to build on those social skills in a way that's really meaningful and impactful, because it's not just for the moment that they're in your classroom or they're being homeschooled, for instance, it's lifelong. I could actually talk a storm on that alone because it's so critical, their social skills development. So, I think it's such a great question because the homeschooling model, how do we reach them? I mean, how would they do this? Many, many parents just access our website and show their teens, or teens get on it just for their own edification, their own growth. Doesn't have to be in a learning environment, for example. So again, I would say contact me. Let's put our brains together and figure out how we can get this to the homeschooling environment.
All right, thank you. And we have not yet received an additional question. So if anybody has those that they've been holding on to, please feel free to put those into the chat box.
Thank you, Kathleen, for being our question reader. We will hang out here for another couple of minutes in case you have other questions that you would like to ask or comments or want to make a connection with Paula. Oh gosh, look at that. But I want to make you aware of an upcoming webinar that we have. It is titled The Impact of Parents' Military Service on Children, Implications for Education Professionals. And it's being provided by the Military Family Research Institute at Purdue University. And that will be on April 26th at 2 p.m. So I hope you'll join us again for our next webinar. Please spread the word about that next opportunity. Just one note about continuing education. This webinar is eligible for one continuing education hour for CHES or MCHES. You can also request a participation certificate if you have another entity or certification that you'd like to get those hours for. If you are a member of ASHA, then you'll receive a free continuing education credit. Non-members you can purchase for $30. And to obtain the continuing education hour, you just will complete the webinar evaluation, which Kathleen will post in the chat box. And non-members will then go to the CE certificate in ASHA's online store and make the purchase there. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at info@ashaweb.org. And just a final reminder to please mark your calendars and come visit us in Indianapolis. We'd love to continue the conversation there. And I want to thank Paula for giving of her time and her expertise and her experience. And I really appreciate it. And I hope that you all enjoyed it as much as I did. And thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a terrific day, and we'll hang out here another few minutes if you have any questions or comments. Thanks, everyone.